Committee meeting. Today is June 18th. Want to acknowledge that we don't yet have a quorum, but we're going to proceed with those items on our agenda that are just reporting only. So the first item is the council administrator's report. So Administrator Kidd.
Yes, good afternoon, councilors. I'll be very brief. The administrator's report basically is to report that primarily staff has been working to expend the funds in the 23-24 budget. And so there are approximately $293,000 that are being requested before the administrations to provide purchase orders for various items that councilors have requested. And secondly, we have 3 existing positions that are open in the 23-24 budget. We are seeking to fill 2 of those immediately. One videographer will come on staff on July 1st in the PIO section, and Kim is actively speaking with an interviewee now for the PIO position that will be working very close to her. We are seeking further directions from the council through the president as to what to do with the 3rd position in case in the 24-25 budget that the 2 positions that we asked for in that are not granted. So you are going to give us more guidance on how to handle that 3rd position, which would be the open vacancy of Lanford Johnson. So that concludes my report unless there is a more in-depth questioning around the finances.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, we are going to move to item number 4, legislative update. And I'm going to hand it off to Pro Tem Alexander for that.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, as part of our Administration and Government Affairs Committee, we thought it would be a great opportunity for us to have an update on what our 2024 legislative agenda and those items that were presented to the state legislature during this last session. I believe we'll have a very good report this afternoon on where those items were and how we fared in this last legislative session. So I'd like to call up Mr. Earl Hilliard Jr., who is part of our government affairs team, and I'll let him introduce who will be bringing us the update. Thank you, Mr. Hilliard.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Earl Hilliard Jr., and I serve as the Senior Public Affairs Officer out of the Mayor's Office. Today, we'll have our last and final update for this legislative session. As you know, we had a lot of challenges, but we had some victories this time. But to not belabor the point, I'd like to call up the Jones Group to give their presentation. They have a PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm Neil Morrison. I work for the Jones Group, and in a minute when they put up the slides, we'll go over there. But I do have some of the rest of the team with us. Behind me is James Aaron, and we have a new member of the Jones Group, Sterling Jones. Sterling came on a couple of months ago, and he's part of our team. So Sterling, would you stand so everybody? So Sterling will be with us full-time, helping out in Montgomery and other places around the state. And I will just take another 30 seconds if you don't mind. I have my granddaughter with me today. She got stuck with her pawpaw. I was supposed to be in Atlanta, but we made some arrangements, and so she ended up being with me. And this is Alexa, one with the headphones on, that is not really paying a lot of attention, but Alexa, wave at him. So she rode down here with me today. But like Mr. Hilliard said, a very unique session, and we'll get started here. The first slide was up, and I've lost it, but there we go. The next slide, please. That's just a reminder of the people on our team. Greg Jones, the founder and CEO, I always like to say over 25 years of experience. He fails to tell everybody 25 I've had by myself. So we've got close to 100 if you ever add everybody up, but he didn't want to tell our age. Next slide, please. This is my favorite slide. These are my favorite council members in the state of Alabama. Just like for you to see those folks. Now, there's a little humor behind this, too. If you remember last year, when I presented, I struggled with trying to remember one council member's name. And so I have that picture in my little briefcase, so I see y'all every day, so I do not forget a certain council member's name. So I was hoping he would be here to have a little fun, but he's not. So we'll go to the next slide. Right here, of course, is a picture of the background of the city of Birmingham. And like I mentioned to you earlier, this session was a heck of a session. I've been around them for, 40 years, and this was very unique. We had a lot of interesting legislation that was introduced that we'll talk about here later, but it caused a lot of tension at time and made it very challenging even trying to get good legislation passed. So, and like the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Ledbetter, said, the last two sessions, they felt like they'd already put a quadrennium in. So it was very challenging this session. One thing I did want to point out, we were able to assist in obtaining $1.5 million for the upcoming World and Fire Games that will be held here in Birmingham. So we were able to help secure that money. I don't know if anybody's made y'all aware of that yet or not. We also were able to secure $892,000 for the Birmingham Promise, which is a wonderful program, y'all, that y'all been supporting for years. Then another $200,000 for the Birmingham Rapid Transit, and then $100,000 for the Birmingham Civil Rights Museum, $250,000 for the City Walk Maintenance program here. So you got a lot of great things going on in Birmingham, the city of Birmingham, that a lot of people are not aware of. Behind the scenes, we were helping to ensure that that funding was there, especially the World and Fire games that are coming up. I know y'all know this, but the audience might not. You will have people from all over the world coming in to the city of Birmingham next year. Next slide, please. Here are some of the bills of interest that y'all made us aware and that we were strongly involved in helping pass. The legislation, SB 9, which was one of y'all's top priorities, which in layman terminology allows you an easier process to take, I shouldn't use the word take, apologize, when you're dealing with property that's been abandoned and y'all have gone the extra mile, your legal team has gone the extra mile, this allows an easier step to take that property and then turn it back into a positive impact for the city of Birmingham. So that's SB 9. And at this point, I really want to thank your legal staff, Camilla and her staff, and Mr. Hilliard. It took all of us working on this one because it was very challenging at times to explain to 105 House members and 35 senators what we were really trying to do, that we were not trying to, when I say we, I am part of your team, when the city's not just trying to take someone's property. So it was a challenge, and thanks to everybody pitching in, and I know at times me and Earl would just get frustrated with each other, but it was a challenge, but very fortunate that was, in the end, we were able to pull it out of the fire. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm particularly excited about this bill, and I know that, I don't know that we have a real count on how many vacant lots, but let's say there's 20,000 vacant lots and we get asked to mow the grass on it all the time. Maybe 90% of those have a city demolition lien on them, and we don't really have any chance of ever getting our money back because there's no real demand for those lots. But then when someone does want to do housing and they maybe get some lots from the land bank, there's always a few vacant lots around that you can't get because people are still paying the taxes on them. So this would allow us to put more clusters of vacant lots together to get them redeveloped. So this is a game changer really for neighborhood revitalization. I think we have to come up with some policies or just some kind of structure, like how will we use this and when. So I don't know. That's the part I never know. Like, once we get a law passed, how do we develop the policy around it? Is that something that the administration would do? Is that our lane? How do we get a program going? Or do we ask, an area like Community Development to come up with a way to put this into practice, I guess.
Dr. O'Quinn may answer, but I was just going to say, I would think it would be twofold. We'd want to look at it from a project management standpoint, what type of legislation or type of, rules we would need to enact on our side, and then from an administrative plan, how would we process, what would the process be from an administrative role? So legislative and administrative, I would think we would want to put a project plan together and review what this new law and the impact that would be, and then work together as a team for that. What do you think, Dr. O'Quinn?
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, that perhaps, one thing that we could, task Counselor Moore with as, chairman of our Community Development Committee is to explore that question. And, noting that he has, that committee has a working relationship with the Community Development Department who would be intimately involved in that type of, redevelopment opportunities.
Any more on that one? Okay. The next bill, and bear with me, I have to really say a lot on this one. It's House Bill 474 by Representative Treadaway and Senator Smitherman. This is one I always formally call the drag racing bill, but it's the exhibition bill. I've been around politics since I was Alexa's age, or her age now. Very rarely have I ever seen a piece of legislation that was passed in a record time at the end of the session with all the other pressures from everything from DEI to the gambling legislation to, libraries, you name it. But this is one time that I will tell you that it is what we proved that with individuals setting aside personalities, working together, you can achieve almost anything. This bill was introduced with less than 9 legislative days left, which is unheard of. But it was something that not only impacts the city of Birmingham, y'all, this impacts the whole state of Alabama. Because this is not just occurring in Birmingham. This is occurring in Montgomery, Mobile, Huntsville. So unfortunately, Birmingham gets more highlight about it because of the, great media that we have here. But this impacts the whole state. And the way we did this was, again, put aside, and we had to do a lot of late night and a lot of phone callings, a lot of calling in IOUs, and a lot of begging for favors. The mayor would reach out to Greg. Greg would reach out to me and said, Mayor says, who do I got to call? We would say, Mayor, you need to call Representative so-and-so. And by gosh, he would call these folks. And then we talked to several of y'all. So what I'm trying to say is let you know that this is something that y'all done great for the city of Birmingham, but actually what you did impacts in a positive way. It allows law enforcement more tools, and law enforcement is a big issue right now. It allows them more tools now to combat a growing problem in this state. So number one, thank you. Number two, thank you for allowing us to be part of this. And at times it was very challenging because we had some House members and 1 or 2 senators that had the wrong impression that we were just trying to give a local municipality the ability to put up these cameras and give people, traffic tickets for running a red light. No, that has nothing to do with this. So this bill, we're very pleased. It came down to the last day, almost the last hour. What little hair I had on my head was gone. Earl was tagging me every 20 minutes. Neil. And I said, Earl, we got it, I promise. I would go and see the speaker and everybody, but anyway, I'll move on, because I know your time is limited. Yeah. So anyway, the next one is by Representative Allman. This is a bill that y'all asked last year for us to get heavily involved in. This is a housing tax break that we were able to help pass, and it allows now a tax credit for home builders in the state of Alabama. The last one has to do with Senator Weaver, and it's the bill that allows your economic development folks the ability to work with smaller projects, like maybe a small shopping center that only has 3 or 4 buildings in it. It gives them more tools here. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, there are always bills that do not pass, and I will go over these real quick, and I apologize for taking too much time. House Bill 473 by Representative Tillman. This had to do with Class 1 municipality vacant property. The Birmingham Housing Trust Fund bill did not pass, that was by Representative Hollis. And then the land bank that Senator Coleman Madison had been working on, or has been working on for years, did not pass. Real briefly, and I know Councilor Clark, you had a question on that one, but real quick on these. Part of this was all the stuff was going on, DEI, gaming. We had a lot of very sensitive, emotional issues going on. Unfortunately, some of the local bills, because of timing of advertisement, time we got the bills introduced, then there was some tension that started brewing amongst local delegation. They all love each other. They're like families, but, families sometimes have issues. And so nothing really passed locally near the middle to the end of the session. On the land bank, we've been working very closely with the legal team here at the city. Senator Coleman Madison has been meeting with various folks about it. The two of the folks that have some strong concerns about it are the Alabama County Commissioners Association and the Alabama Realtors Association. That doesn't mean the local folks. I'm just talking about their association statewide. So those bills did not. I've been given some marching orders this morning about an angle that they would like me to pursue, but I'll be glad to answer any questions on that. If not, we'll go to the next slides. All right.
Any questions? Councilor Clark?
Well, I wanted to ask about the Housing Trust Fund. I know there was an Alabama Housing Trust Fund that's not funded, but our city one, did we introduce a bill really late?
What occurred there was, ma'am, any local legislation has to be advertised for 4 consecutive weeks. So by the time it ran its process, and the time it made it to us to Montgomery, and the time we got it introduced.
Was it late in the session?
It was, yes, ma'am.
Pretty
It was
late,
past
so-
the halfway mark, and then some tension started brewing with the local delegation, and they didn't bring up any local legislation last part of the session.
So it wasn't the bill itself, it was just kind of the
No, ma'am,
timing?
it was not the bill itself, it was the timing, and all these other issues that were going on.
Okay. The only other thing I want to point out is that the workforce housing bill is really a big deal, because the 4% tax credits, when we did the senior housing at Southtown, which I can talk about now, you all were asked to put I think the local subsidy that made that deal go was like $8 million. And so we can't have any deal flow with that level of subsidy being required. So what this workforce housing tax credit bill does is it would close that gap so that the amount of local subsidy needed would be very small. And so as the housing authority is looking to reset its portfolio and get more of their brick and mortar to be more modern, then they can use this tool. But they did put a cap on it. There were a lot of edits, so it got capped at $5 million, I think, which is not much. But I think it's an important start, and I just want to say that, because I know we focus on single-family ownership, but getting more apartments done, especially for our housing authority, because they need to modernize their portfolio, and that will give our neighborhoods a chance to revitalize too, if those are modernized. Just wanted to say that, because that was big. That maybe had 2 or 3 rounds in the legislature
Yes, ma'am.
before it came out, so.
The next slide, please, which will be the last one besides questions and answers from anyone. Here are just some bills that we highlighted earlier that was during the session that caused a lot of other great bills to be slowed down and some not having a chance to pass. One of them was lottery and gaming. Came down to the end, y'all, and failed by 1 vote. That issue is going to be addressed again, I promise you. The state of Alabama's got to come up with a new source of revenue because of prison issues. The second one was a bill that did pass that will protect our children from access to pornography. It's called age verification, so that did pass. And then something that's going to be huge for Jefferson County and the city of Birmingham is the last day when I say we, the Jones Group was heavily involved in this. we were able to pass the bill that creates a agricultural farm center just north of Birmingham up around Warrior, Alabama. That will bring literally millions of dollars of revenue back into the city here and to the county. And then the last slide, please. If you got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Hilliard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. O'Quinn has.
Yes, so one of the issues that the council was made aware of after the session started, so it was too late to try and, get any legislation going, but this council has been very focused on the code enforcement issue, and it was brought to our attention that we are very limited in our capacity to do enforcement activities directed at persons who are outside of our jurisdiction. And that is a profound issue for the city of Birmingham. We have a lot of our blighted structures or properties that fail to comply with our code that are owned by entities or individuals who are outside of our jurisdiction. So I'm bringing this up because I want to get it on the record that one of the things that this council is very interested in is having a conversation with the Jefferson County delegation about authorizing, the city of Birmingham specifically, but I think there's pretty broad interest in this as an issue across many jurisdictions, especially in the Jefferson County area, about, enabling local jurisdictions to be able to hold these property owners accountable to the local codes.
Yes, sir. Just briefly on that, especially for the young people behind us from Cumberland School of Law, what he's discussing here is the city of Birmingham and other municipalities have a lot of codes, but unfortunately, some of these landowners might live in Utah or Washington State, and so it's been very challenging to enforce what you already have on the books. And so what I would suggest, Mr. President, is to get with Mr. Hilliard and Camilla and their teams, and let's talk about it this summer of what can we do, because again, it just won't impact the city of Birmingham. I promise you, every township, city, borough, whatever you want to call it in state of Alabama is having something similar, because we have a lot of what I would call distant landowners. And it is a challenge, and we'd be glad to step in and help any way we can, but I would suggest sometime this summer maybe to engage in the dialogue and to see what we can come up with to get passed, and then we'll be more than happy to try to set up a meeting with the delegation.
Thank you.
So that basically concludes our legislative report. I did want to mention two more bills really quick because we had discussed them. HB 365 did pass. That was the one that Councilor Quinn was especially excited about. It requires municipal officers to participate in complete training courses. That did pass. So starting next year, I'm sure you will be getting brochures and other things about where you can get your training. Obviously, it is authorized under the Alabama League of Municipalities, which means I'm sure NOC will be included, which means the state conference of both, and then the NOC will probably qualify for that. And then lastly, we talked about this, especially Councilman Tate and I, HB 182, the removal of unauthorized individuals, basically known as the anti-squatting bill, provides an owner a method of signing an affidavit and getting someone out within about 48 hours. So that should be an exciting bill when it comes into to help with a lot of the problems we have about people squatting and unauthorized in property. With that, I want to say thank you. It's been a wonderful year. I think we were able to participate well together, and we were able to stay in communication over the legislative cycle. Wanted to make sure that the Jones Group, you got a chance to see who we work with in Montgomery and who's there, especially when we can't be there, and whether it's James, Aaron, Pierre, whether it's Neil or Greg Jones. You know, obviously we have a really good team in Montgomery that helps and works with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. Thank you again to the Jones Group and to your team. I think we got your marching orders last year. You did ask us to build our own relationships with legislators, and I believe that those relationships have helped to move along our legislative agenda. So thank you. We look forward to next year. We'll segue into later in a following committee meeting where we could just talk about next steps as we prepare for the 25 legislative agenda. So thank you all so much. Back to you now, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, so now that we have a quorum, I want to go back to item number 2, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. I believe those in our stack. Got it. All right, yeah. Yeah. All right. So these are the minutes of the Tuesday, May 21st Committee of the Whole meeting. If there's no additions or corrections, we'll consider a motion to approve those as written.
Move for approval.
Do we have a second?
Every time I second, someone says it's an error, but I'll second.
All right, it's been motioned and second, and all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. The next item up on our agenda is Urban Neighborhood Zoning Code Amendment. Jess Blankenship, Senior Planner with PEP, will be presenting.
Can everyone see this?
Yes. Okay.
All right, well, good afternoon. I'm Jess Mays, and I serve as a senior planner in the Department of Planning, Engineering, and Permits. And today, I'm going to be going over our mixed-use districts amendments package. These are the goals that we've outlined for this amendment package, and this has been a collaborative effort with the Birmingham Department of Transportation and Community Development. Our first goal is to promote housing choice, and we want to promote choices beyond the two extremes of either single-family or a large multifamily. We also want to increase density within the city, specifically looking at 2 to 12 units. We want to encourage transit options, and we want to create vibrant, walkable neighborhoods. And we are also consolidating the zoning ordinance. We are currently working out of 2 zoning ordinances. So first, why are we doing this? According to AARP, 80% of American households are no longer traditional nuclear families with 2 parents and 2 children. But 72% of American housing caters to that traditional family demographic. So we know that we have a mismatch in our housing stock versus our housing needs. One of the ways that we're proposing to increase density with housing choice is with our new zoning district, Urban Neighborhood. Urban Neighborhood is designed to be compact and walkable and contain a variety of housing options along with some specific commercial uses. and it would be located within a half-mile of high-capacity transit. Buildings will be oriented to the street, and parking will be in the rear, to the side, or located in parking structures that can serve multiple lots. Housing options in this zoning district will include small lot, single-family, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, multiplexes, cottage developments, and live-work. And those limited commercial uses that we're allowing are going to be offices, bakeries, urban groceries, retail, and restaurants. So looking at this graphic on the screen, this is what our urban design team has done as a rendering for what urban neighborhood is going to look like. And the thing that jumps out to you is when you look at it, you cannot tell that these housing choices are not single family. Everything is the same scale, it's the same size. But when we point it out to you, these two homes are single family. This is actually a duplex. This is live work. This is a quadplex. And this is a multiplex. So that is really the driving point of urban neighborhood, is that we're offering these extra housing options, but at the same time, we're maintaining that scale and character of single family. Just a quick disclaimer, there's nothing official about this map. This is not a zoning map. Nothing on this map is guaranteed, so I don't want to scare anyone. But when we're thinking about putting urban neighborhood on the ground, one of the most important factors that we're looking for is that we're within an area that is half a mile of high-capacity transit. And this high-capacity transit could be the BRT, it could be other bus lines, or it could even be the Red Rock Trail system for high-capacity pedestrian transit. Urban neighborhood is going to benefit these transit routes by providing the density that they need to be viable. Other factors that we're also looking for are areas with narrow lots that are suitable for the small lot single family, areas with high vacancy, and then our historically dense neighborhoods that already have this development pattern on the ground. And these are going to be the neighborhoods that are primarily adjacent to downtown. So on the map, 50th Street and Woodlawn, that's kind of been our real life where we would put this rendering to show y'all. So just want to call that out. But also looking at this map, that golden line is the BRT, that cross-hatched red is our mixed-use districts, and then all of that yellow is what is currently single-family, and then the red boundary is where urban neighborhood would go. So you can see how urban neighborhood works with the existing zoning. We have the mixed use, then branching out from that, we have urban neighborhood, then we have our single family. So urban neighborhood would serve as a buffer between mixed use and single family. This,
Explain that again, because I see the crosshatch, I'm sorry. Can I?
Sure.
So the crosshatch, that's mixed use, and then I see the yellow, that's single family, but where's the buffer?
the buffer is that red line going around there.
That's like the boundary, the half-mile boundary, right?
Yes, this is the half-mile boundary.
But you were saying like the urban neighborhoods, it would be the whole, within the boundary would be the urban.
Right, yes.
Okay,
So like this is gonna be that spine with the mixed use, and then branching out from that, this is what would be urban neighborhood.
okay,
Then down here you have Crestwood North, this is healthy single family, we're not proposing to change that, but between this healthy single family, you have urban neighborhood acting as a buffer to the high density.
that's what you were saying, okay. A buffer to, a transition between.
Yes, a transition. So this is that same area in Woodlawn with 50th Street, and as you can see, there is a high rate of vacancy in these 7 blocks. All of those vacant lots are in red. So when we go to apply this, this would be the type of area that we're looking for, an area that is going to benefit from this infill housing. This is 50th Street as a streetscape, so you can see what it looks like now with the vacant lots. There is a lot of missing teeth. On this block, there are currently 8 single-family homes, so we have 8 units of housing. But if this were to become urban neighborhood, then we could infill those vacant lots with multiple housing types. So not only now do we have single family, but we also have duplexes, a triplex, a quadplex, a multiplex, and townhomes. So we've gone from 8 units of housing to 31 units of housing, and these additional 23 units still very much match that size and scale of the existing neighborhood. These are some real-life examples of the urban neighborhood housing types in Birmingham. Probably the most important one is the one in the far left corner. That's 4th Avenue South going into Avondale. That's a single-family home, a quadplex, and a duplex right next to each other. And you can see that all three are pretty much the same size. The next portion is the most exciting part, the actual text changes in all of your packets. These are the dimensional regulations, the design standards, and the permitted uses table. Just for clarity, this is the main packet. It says Article 3 definitions. It's a smaller packet, so I don't want y'all to get confused, because I know we have a lot of paper that we gave you. But this is the area and dimensional
Dr. Chet,
regulations.
We have a question.
Yeah, so the proposal is to only do this in the 1 mile area around the BRT, or are there other high-capacity mass transit lines that?
There are other high-capacity transit routes where we would like to apply this. So we're looking to apply this anywhere that has a high-capacity transit route, whether that's a BJCTA line or a pedestrian transit route, areas with narrow lots where it's hard for developers to be able to meet the current setbacks, but maybe they could do small lot, single family. Any areas with high vacancy, and then our historically dense neighborhoods like Highland Park, where it already is an urban neighborhood.
Yeah, so is there any residential area that wouldn't be, I mean, because I heard you say Crestwood North, but, you know, as an exclusion, but I'm just thinking, I'm just trying to, I guess, imagine where this applies or where it doesn't apply.
We have
You
not.
have a overall,
We have not decided where exactly to put this yet because we're still going through the framework process. We're going to kind of do this along with that framework rezoning. So that way, when we show the neighborhood a map, that map is not constantly changing. So we're actually going to take this to the neighborhood when we go to rezone and get their thoughts on it. But we are not touching healthy single-family housing throughout the city. That is not the intent.
yeah.
So this image here is the Woodlawn neighborhood surrounding I-3 Academy, correct?
Yes, on 50th Street.
Okay. And it's identifying all of the vacant parcels.
Yes.
They're currently, so I'm interpreting that this would be one of the areas of interest. But as part of the process, you know, this would require a public hearing.
Right.
And, you know, the community would obviously have an opportunity to weigh in on the change in zoning from, what's this area currently zoned?
Some of this, I believe, is currently zoned either I-1, light industrial, or R3. And yes, the community would be weighing in on zoning decisions. Right now, all we're passing is these text amendments. Nothing is being rezoned. We are optimistically hoping to have rezoning finished by the end of the year, but we'll see. But when we go to rezone, we'll actually be going to each community, completely walking through the existing ordinance, what urban neighborhood is, and getting their feedback on if this is something that they're comfortable with in their neighborhood.
Right, so this just introduces the language within our code that, you know, offers the opportunity for a neighborhood to, you know,
Yes, all this is an opportunity. It is nothing definite.
right. Council Williams.
Well, I think that you just answered my question, but I just wanted to clarify that even if this text is introduced and it does pass, that each area would still have to be voted on by the full council for a reason.
Right, it will. So right now, we're just
Okay.
trying to pass the text amendments. When we come back with that rezoning, we'll have to come before you again. And it would be the same process as any applicant who's trying to rezone. We'll do our community meetings, we'll go to the zoning advisory committee, we'll go to the planning and zoning committee, then we'll come before you again as the full council.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I feel like this zoning reform is is hugely important, especially for having some sort of affordability. I mean, nobody can afford to infill these lots, one house per lot.
Exactly.
It'll cost a fortune, and nobody will be able to afford it. So being able to do duplex, triplex, and I like the idea of accessory dwelling units as well, especially when we have, open alleys where you could actually have another dwelling at the back of a long, narrow lot, that.
With its own access?
Yeah, with its own access. But the part about this that scares me the most is the 12 unit, the 15 unit. It just,
And that is a real concern that
It's
we've
just
gotten from residents.
I just feel like we're going from that single family, that one house per lot cadence to something kind of potentially extreme that would be rentals, which would be, sort of destabilizers. Because when I think about the spot zoning that killed a lot of our neighborhoods when we were demolishing houses at a rate of 300-400 a year, but with our HUD entitlement money, we were infilling with these 6-8 unit sideways Motel 6s, poorly managed apartments. It really, it threw off the rhythm of the neighborhoods. I don't know, just the 12 unit, just the idea of one of those sitting in the middle of a, duplex, triplex, single family block, then a 12-plex, that it could just be there and it's permitted, that just kind of freaks me out. If it's not on a commercial corridor or something. So that would be my main concern.
And I will say that just because the district allows 12 units, that does not mean that the lot is going to allow 12 units. So we are requiring in urban neighborhood that each unit be 750 square feet. So to do 12 units, you automatically have to have a 9,000 square foot lot. A lot of these lots are not 9,000 square feet. So say someone has a 6,000 square foot lot and they do want to do 12 units. Well, they automatically have to go to the zoning board of adjustment. They have to get a density variance. That triggers the neighborhood process, and then they go before ZBA. There's a really good chance that if they need a density variance, they may also need a height variance and a setback variance. That's going to throw up red flags, and the board's going to say, hey, if you need all these variances, maybe you do this somewhere that actually allows it. And then if they did, looking at this, these lots look large, but there's actually a lot line running through there. So the chance that someone is going to be able to do 12 lots is actually very low.
But they could buy both lots. They could buy both lots
About the building standards.
and subdivide it, combine them.
But it just answers part of the question.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was saying they could get both and combine them.
They could, but they have
Because-
to go to subdivision, which also triggers the city council process. So there are a lot of regulatory processes to potentially get to that 12. And we have explained that to some of the neighborhoods, and they were actually relieved. They felt like that offered more protection because right now our multifamily classification, it doesn't differentiate. You get to 5 and you can do 5 units, you could do 500 units. But offering this 5 to 12 classification, that's kind of like a bridge from the small single family. Then you have that middle where it's 5 to 12. Then you start getting into your larger multifamily. We also do have design standards. We're going to look at those too, but those will also kind of help ease some of that concern over this giant thing's going to loom over the neighborhood.
Before you get to that, I have a question. So, my interpretation of this is that we're trying to focus on infill development in existing areas. So using this image as an example here, I'm concerned about, would this only apply to new construction, or could existing properties be converted into, urban neighborhood? And would we do that, zoning on a lot by lot, designation, or would we, typically we do zoning kind of in areas and not individual properties. So, explain to me how you guys envision this kind of rolling out. My assumption would be that we would try and do areas, and not just, individual lots. But then, do you target it towards I guess if we're doing it as an area, you can't just restrict it to new construction. It would apply to all the properties in that area.
So are you asking if someone has a single-family home and we rezoned it to urban neighborhood, if they could then do a duplex?
Yeah, so if they have an existing single-family residential home, could they, convert it to a live-over-work arrangement, or a duplex or whatever,
Yes, they could, as long as they're meeting the requirements within the ordinance. And this was also one of the things that really attracted us to urban neighborhood, is because we do have a lot of these older homes that are vacant because people cannot afford to buy them and then renovate them as a single-family home. But maybe they can afford to buy them and turn them into a duplex. And then for when we go to apply, you're right, we don't like to spot zone lot by lot. So we would prefer to do block to block and have it match the same zoning. But we are not to the applying this on the ground yet. That's going to come later. So we have not sat down and looked specifically at where we want to put this in the city. So right now we're just trying to get the text changes.
Council Clark?
I just want to go back to accessory dwelling units. You didn't really address that. Are we against those, or why aren't we pursuing those?
We are. ADUs will be allowed in urban neighborhood, and an entire section on ADUs in the ordinance is one of our top priorities for 2025. So
2025.
we
So
do
this-
feel like they deserve their own section. So we want to be able to devote an entire section in the ordinance to regulating ADUs and being able to provide graphics on what they look like. We've also talked about a possible pattern book for ADUs to make it easier, and that way we know exactly what we're getting.
So, but ADUs are not included in the text changes that are before?
ADUs are allowed in urban neighborhood. They
Okay,
are.
Okay, they are.
They're in the main packet, and I believe they're on page 8.
I got a big stack of paper here.
Yeah, I know, there's lots of papers.
Article 2 or Article 3?
The main packet is going to start with Article 3 definitions.
Article 3 definitions, all right.
Oh, I'm sorry, ADUs are on page 12.
But, but what you're talking about, the design, and that sort of thing, that hasn't been accounted for yet in these text changes
Do you mean the design standards?
for ADUs, yeah.
No, the pattern book, no, that's not been accounted for. That's also another goal for 2025.
Okay, so the text changes that are before us just currently say, yes, in an urban neighborhood,
Right, so right now,
Designated
the
area.
only language we have for ADUs is, yes, they are allowed, and then they can take up more than 30% of the rear yard,
800 square feet.
and they have to be 800 square feet or less than the size of the primary structure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I'll move on. So this is the area and dimensional regulations table. It's on page 16 of that main packet. Urban neighborhood is the first row. So you can see we require that 750 square feet per unit that I was talking about. We have a 0-foot rear setback. We have a 5-foot setback on each side, and that is going to be 5 foot on the left, 5 feet on the right, for a total of 10. And then we have capped the height at 35 feet. And 35 feet is the same height requirement for our single-family districts. So nothing in urban neighborhood will be taller than a single-family home. We've also made adjustments to our mixed-use districts in the table, and those changes are also in red. These are the design standards that I was talking about, and these are dwelling design standards, and they will apply to all of our character districts. So they'll apply to urban neighborhood and mixed use. And these are going to start on page 8 of your main packet. And then I've also included the little illustration packet that goes into more detail about the design standards. So dwellings will have to be oriented to the street. Porches are required at the main front facade. They may be roofed or screened, but they cannot be covered. And the front porch, including the steps, may extend into the front yard setback, but it must be at least 3 feet from the property line. Windows are required on walls facing streets or common areas, and they have to cover at least 20% of that wall area. And flat roofs will have to be enclosed by a 42-inch minimum parapet, which is just a roof wall. And then shed roofs are only allowed in the rear yards, and they must be attached to the primary structure. These are the non-dwelling design standards, and they're going to start on page 9 of your main packet. Doors and windows shall be equal to 25 to 75% of the total frontage facade, and they cannot be spaced further than 20 feet apart. Building rooftops shall be designed to effectively screen mechanical equipment from street level view, and decks are not allowed in the front yard. And very quickly, this graphic, this is what we would consider mixed-use medium. So I just want to say this is not a rendering of urban neighborhood. This would be a bigger scale. Moving on to the permitted uses table, we've added some definitions, and these definitions are on page 1 of your main packet. We've also removed all car-dependent uses in mixed-use districts. So this means that if a property is rezoned to a mixed-use district category, car washes would no longer be allowed. We've removed D6 because it was underutilized and we don't get very many requests to rezone. And all of these changes to the permitted uses table are in red. And then this is our final slide, and it just goes over our stakeholder engagement. We had 4 stakeholder meetings in November. We took this to the Citizen Advisory Board November 20th, and we received a vote of support. We went to the Planning Commission in January, February, and March. In January and February, the Planning Commission offered us edits and suggestions. We included those, and on March 6th, we got a unanimous vote of support from the Planning Commission. And then May 7th, we went to the Zoning Advisory Committee, and they did a unanimous ratification of support on the Planning Commission's decision. And that is the presentation.
So question regarding the car washes. You said that all auto-dependent uses removed from mixed-use districts. That is part of these text changes as well?
Yes, it is. So if these text changes were to get passed, when we go to rezone, car washes will no longer be allowed in mixed-use low, mixed-use medium, mixed-use high, and mixed-use downtown.
Okay, and does that cover car washes of all kinds? You know, because we've got some guys with a truck and a power washer and a big container of water, you know, on a trailer. And then we have, you know, the $8 million automated car washes, so.
Right. I believe that we did automated car washes, but if you're suggesting we remove manual too, then we are open to that.
Yeah, I'm just looking for clarity.
No, actually, we did remove manual, so it's both automated and manual.
So
And this is that permitted uses table where it'll list that out.
that would also, I hate these tables. Anyway,
I'm sorry, I gave you all a lot of papers, I know.
so all auto-dependent uses, so no oil change places, no auto repair.
No drive-throughs.
Used car lots.
No additional gas stations.
In mixed use.
Only, yes, and only mixed use. We've removed auto-dependent uses.
So all of there would be a lot, I'm just imagining this, I would guess that were the council to approve this, there would be a great many number of properties that would be non-conforming under, well, I don't know that, we're kind of in a in-between place in our, zoning. We have a number of proposed zoning changes, land use changes with our framework plans that the council hasn't yet approved. So, but there's a lot, my understanding is that there's a lot of change to mixed use in those proposed land use plans. So talk to me a little bit about that. Give me some feedback.
I would say for the framework plans, the only places that we are going from mixed use are areas where we initially applied it that just were not ready for it. I think a really good example of this is out on Parkway East. A lot of that is mixed use, and it's just not ready for it because it can't meet the setbacks. It's still very much that general commercial look. And so that was probably a mistake on our part, and we plan to go back and fix that with the future land use plans. We're also expanding mixed use downtown a little bit around here.
Councilor Clark?
Yeah, can you just tell me what all this means?
Yes, so this is the permitted uses table. It's in the zoning ordinance. These are all of the uses that we define in our ordinance. And then these are all of our zoning districts. And then you have to go through this table and see if what you want to do is P permitted, or if it has conditions, which is PC, or if you require a special exception, which is SC, or if it's just not allowed, which is X. And the P, PC, SC, X, they all go with the larger additional packet that says Article 2, uses permitted with conditions. So this is out of the zoning ordinance, and it has all of the conditions for a use or for a special exception.
Okay, what is PAC and PMP?
PAC is permitted as accessory, so it would be permitted as an accessory to the primary use. And then PMP is permitted with a master plan. So it would require a master plan.
Okay.
Can we get that explanation for all those abbreviations on the sheet?
Yes, I can definitely send Maisha a key for that if y'all would like, because I know it's a lot of little abbreviations.
I feel like I'll need one of those like slide rule things.
Well, it helps if you know what it means.
Yeah, that's why we have professionals, a bunch of them that do this. You gotta have them. All right. Counselor Tate?
Jessica, Jess, what is X again?
X is not allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Woods?
Thank you, Mr. President. So do you have anything, I guess, have y'all done any work on like what the impact of this will be to like current property owners? Because what happens is then we get a bunch of cases and then people that bought property and it was zoned for what they wanted to do with it, suddenly it becomes not allowed, and then what happens from there is no telling. So is there any idea of like what overall impact
So when we did our November stakeholder meetings, we included a bunch of professionals, you know, around the area, developers, architects, you know, people like Build Up Inslee, nonprofits who are really in this game. And we went over these amendments to make sure that, one, they weren't too burdensome for what these people wanted to do, if they were cost effective, you know, and if they were realistic. And the feedback that we got was that, you know, these are realistic and they are very much in line with what other mid-sized to large cities are also doing. So we feel like this is a very good combination of different uses that are allowed in this new urban neighborhood district. And then with our mixed-use districts, eliminating those auto-dependent uses, because a lot of other cities are doing that to promote the transit and walkability factor.
Okay. And how soon are you wanting this to go to council?
Just the text changes. After this meeting, this will have to go back to a committee of the whole for P and Z, where we are hoping to get a vote, and then it would advance to the full council within that 4-week advertising period.
4 weeks from now?
No, not 4 weeks from now, 4 weeks from when we go back to P and Z.
Okay, so we got a little time.
So maybe 6 to 7 weeks from now.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah. So again, these text changes would just create the opportunity for, you know, folks to be able to consider doing this for a neighborhood. And there's a few other things kind of sprinkled in here, like the removal of all the auto-dependent uses, the addition of ADUs, and other things. I would assume that if approved, so urban neighborhoods is just one component of this. I assume that if the council approved this, then the removal of all the auto-dependent uses from mixed use would immediately apply. All of those uses, auto-dependent uses that are currently in mixed use would be non-conforming, you know, they'd basically be grandfathered in. So they could remain that use until the property is sold, right? It changes hands.
It actually depends. Something can remain legal nonconforming, but if there's a fire or an act of God and it destroys over 50% of the value, it loses its legal nonconforming status. It then has to conform to our ordinance. We also have situations, especially with housing, where maybe the housing was subpar, it's legal nonconforming, it's been the same owner for 50 years, they haven't done a whole lot. Suddenly they decide to sell, a new person comes in, they try to pull a permit, and we say, oh, well, actually, this is legal nonconforming, it's worth $300,000, your permit's $700,000, it's not allowed. And in that case, they have to rezone. So it's not necessarily that it just stays that way until it changes hands.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then talk to me about this planned residential district is being removed.
That is D6, and we did an internal audit of our zoning ordinance to see how often we were utilizing each district, and we found that D6 is just really never utilized. It's a PRD district, so it's, you know, it's kind of like, Tim, what would you say? What would you say D6 is?
Well, D6 is a planned district.
Like Oxmoor?
Yeah, it is, and so, you know, you get a benefit, you know, if you're gonna save open space, within a development, then you get a benefit from that, and so you get like a density bonus. I believe in the D6, you can develop a single-family house on a lot as small as 3,750 square feet, which, you know, is in contrast, R3 requires 6,000, but you get that bonus based on the overall development size and the reduction in the lot size based on open space.
Okay. Do we have any D6, I'm sorry, districts?
Well, I guess it was, I think in the old ordinance, it was R8, and I do believe there's one development is it Lamplighter Road and Pratt City, I think, that is zoned R8 in the past.
Okay. And again, if this were to pass, that would just be a non-conforming use.
I wouldn't say that that would be non-conforming, since once the R8 and the D6 goes away, it would probably revert back to a D3, since it is like a single-family development.
Yeah, and those uses, they would be allowed, and so the only thing is the lots are smaller, but they are lots of record. And so you can still develop those lots of record, provided you meet setbacks.
Okay. I want to ask about something else that is sort of a national conversation, but has recently become a local conversation too, which is recently read an article about a single-family residential development in Bessemer, some 700 homes that's being proposed to be sold by an out-of-state entity for 100% rental use. I mean, I don't know how I feel about it, but, do we have anything in our code that allows for or restrict, that type of development or use for existing development?
We currently do not, and I think if we tried to add in something like that, it could be seen as arbitrary and capricious, because we are then favoring homeowners over the less advantaged people who have to rent.
Okay. Am I remembering correctly, Pro Tem Alexander, that the property that the city of Birmingham sold off of Lakeshore, the 200 some odd acres that we sold a year or so ago, wasn't it proposed for 100% rental development? No?
No. No.
Okay. Thank you for that correction. All right.
I know.
Well, this is exciting, y'all.
Thank you. We're glad y'all are excited.
Yeah, I mean, I am excited about it because, it is challenging under the current circumstances to, build new housing and, we're even trying to do affordable housing, but the affordable housing that we're trying to do, a lot of folks would argue that it's not affordable. So, anyway, in any case, this definitely helps. What's the pleasure of the council?
Oh, we're voting?
Yes, we have a quorum, and so, we would vote today to move this on to the full council for consideration, or if we...
After it goes to where
I think you're waiting on a decision from the Planning and Zoning Committee, correct? Or-
Right, we are.
And you need a vote from the Planning and Zoning Committee? Because my recollection was that the Planning and Zoning Committee advanced it to Committee of the Whole.
They did, but today was not advertised as a joint planning and zoning committee, so y'all can't take a official vote. It does have to go back to the planning and zoning committee.
Okay, so would we, this is more of a legal question, will we have to refer it back to the Planning and Zoning Committee, or could the Committee of the Whole, for our part, I understand that, Planning and Zoning Committee would have to render a decision, but can we render a decision as Committee of the Whole?
I would think you could express your feelings through a vote. The ordinance does require us to go through P and Z for a vote there, but
Okay.
we could report, your vote in the zoning report.
May I? Thank you. So if we adopt this, I know we're just talking about the language first, but let's say we adopt and the urban neighborhoods overlay is in effect for certain places that y'all have recommended. If I've got a big enough lot, I can build 15 units on a street with otherwise single-family duplex and triplex without asking anybody. I just design it, go get a permit, design to the form, go get a permit, don't exceed the height, and I'm good.
As long as you're following the regulations set forth in the zoning ordinance, yes.
Okay. So the only way I couldn't just do that is my lot's not big enough and I've got to put two together, so I've got to go to subdivision.
Right, if you're trying to combine two lots, that would have to go to subdivision.
But usually subdivision doesn't ask what you're going to do with it. They just let you combine your two lots because you own both of them. So, and then does the city council have to vote on all subdivision? I'm really concerned about those 15 units. I really am. I don't understand why we're putting that in there. I could see it next to mass transit on a busy street that's maybe an edge of a single-family neighborhood, maybe, like an urban edge, say like 12th Avenue in Norwood or something, or 3rd Avenue West. I mean, I could see it maybe on those kinds of streets, but not just in the middle of a neighborhood. I just don't see it. So help me. Is it because you can squeeze it into the same form, but it's not the same form because it requires a bigger lot?
Yeah, I think that is the logic that, it's kind of like Jessica said before, that as long as it's single-family scale, it's not more than 35 feet tall, the front doors address the front of the street, primary street. There is a porch, the windows and doors. So it's just a tool to create more affordability, more attainability.
Yeah, like
And I will say too, when we go to apply, how you're talking about 12th Avenue, 4th Avenue, maybe those are places where we would put it, but as far as going into these single-family neighborhoods where there's healthy single-family, we're not putting urban neighborhood there. There's no need for it. It's healthy single-family, the housing stock is fine, so we would not be putting urban neighborhood in those areas.
But I think you would be putting it in most our neighborhoods because most of them aren't healthy.
Right,
Even the
unhealthy
single-family ones are not
we-
healthy, but why would we?
to fill up the vacancy.
Why would we refill them with that? That's what I'm saying. I mean, it just seems like, unless, I can think of probably like every neighborhood, with very few exceptions, could probably benefit from this. But it would permit one of those, or maybe the street could develop with entirely these because there would be no prohibition to that. So why would we do that?
Our thoughts are to increase the transit options and give our transit lines the density that they need to be viable. We have done a study and we found that the BRT does need 15 dwelling units per acre.
I agree, 6th Avenue South, Lom Avenue, yeah. But what about interior to neighborhoods? So they could benefit from the rest of this, the ADUs, the duplex. That's about as far as I want to go, quite frankly. But that could put a lot of pressure on our neighborhoods, I think.
Well, this is
Negative
not
pressure.
This is not final, so if there is anything that you want us to change, we're happy to sit down and
I just
go
think
through
that
this.
that particular one should be reserved for, I think without it, it can go a lot of places.
Right.
But I think with with that density on a lot, like 15 units on a lot, that needs to be reserved for some special places.
Well, it is 12 units. We're only
Oh, is
going
it
up to 12.
Okay, 5 to 12, okay. Yeah, I think the 5 to 12 might need to be reserved for special
And
places.
another, thing to kind of interject is that with our new changing in parking requirements, how would that play into this? Would, you know, I'm thinking about a lot of our south side neighborhoods, where, you know, there was a lot of spot zoning and there was a lot of Motel Sixes squeezed into a single-family, you know, narrow lot, that, you know, it literally looks like a motel with a parking lot, and it's oriented to the side of the property versus the front of the property. I think it's, you know, everybody doesn't want to see a repeat of that type of thing, and you guys have addressed that. That, you know, it's,
The building standards would help to prevent that from happening.
right,
Yeah, and so now it's kind of a question about scale.
right, yeah,
Parking pressure, I mean, you know, that's kind of a market decision, you know, for the developer and the purchaser and the renter. You know, do I wanna live in a place that may not have parking anymore? You know, so you have to make that decision.
yeah, so let's just imagine, so the 12 units would be allowed in the urban neighborhood district. So potentially, if the developer decided, and they had adequate square footage to do this, that potentially the developer could put a 12-space surface parking on that piece of property. Is that?
In the rear, and if they do have alley access, it will be required to come off the alley.
Okay,
But I will say, the feedback we got from developers was, once you start trying to pencil that math out, it usually does not become fruitful. So if they're wanting to do those 12 units with 12 parking spaces, they could probably get more money if they just bumped it up to 20. So again, they're going to locate elsewhere. They're going to locate in a mixed-use district where their price per unit is going to go down.
okay. And as part of the zoning change process, so, you know, one of the neighborhoods that's being considered for this is parts of the Woodlawn area. So how does that process kick off? You know, how do the residents initiate it, or does the planning staff start doing community engagement with the neighborhood?
It'll be the planning staff. So once we can get these text changes adopted and then get our framework plans adopted, we will be immediately kicking off the process, because we do expect it to be a lengthy process, and we want to make sure that the neighborhoods are comfortable. So we are anticipating going to each community at least twice, in addition to all the regulatory meetings. And then we also have an open door policy. So if anyone in the community ever wants to drop by, you know, between, say, 7 a.m., 6 p.m., you know, we're happy to go over anything, really go into depth if they have any questions. But it will be us actually kicking off these meetings. And we will be advertising them in the paper. And we also have an Instagram, if y'all don't follow us.
Yeah, and you'd still have to go through the 4 committees.
Right, we still have
planning
to go
commission.
through the zoning advisory committee, we still have to go through the planning and zoning committee, and we still have to come before city council, just like anybody else.
Right.
So we hope that y'all would vote for it, but if you didn't, then, you know, we're just like anyone else going through the rezoning process.
All right. So,
I'd like to make a motion to recommend this to whoever we're recommending it
to the full council.
to the full council, or later?
Yes. Yeah, they still need a vote from the planning and zoning committee, but we
Okay.
can recommend it out of committee of the whole.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the text changes.
All right, I'll second that. All right, we're ready for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you in, Planning and Zoning Committee. All right, next up, we have a report on the mayor's community safety plan from Uche Bean, Director of Community Safety Initiatives.
Can I get a binder clip from your collection? A binder clip from your collection? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Uche Bean, and I serve as the Director of Community Safety Initiatives for the City of Birmingham Mayor's Office. And so just here to present to you what we are looking at as far as the Mayor's Community Safety Plan. And so just wanted to introduce my team members here. This is Don Mosley. He serves as the Project Oversight Manager for the CVIPI DOJ grant that we were granted last year. And this is Devin Tanksley, who serves as the Program Analyst. So I just wanted you to see my team, the faces that are going to be moving this work as in regards to that DOJ grant of $1.9 million that we were able to receive. Thank you. So next slide, please. So since 2015, Birmingham, as you know, has seen over 100 homicides or more per year. And usually about 90% of those every year are gun-related incidents. Which is making Birmingham the top 10 of the most dangerous cities in America. Per the FBI Uniform Crime Report, it indicates that Birmingham has a violent crime rate of 14.85 incidents per 100,000 people. Next slide, please. So our office is focused on these faces, the why. These are the faces of those that lost their lives in Birmingham last year. Not just the gun violence, but just in general, the homicide. So this is the focus of our office, specifically those that lost their lives to gun violence. Next slide, please. So our comprehensive strategy is operating within a framework of what we call community-based public safety and violence intervention. And it's committed to realizing Mayor Woodfin's vision to reimagine public safety. And so our focus is not just focused on law enforcement, it's actually focused on a holistic perspective dealing with our community and how we're addressing those social determinants and treating gun violence as a public health crisis and not a law enforcement issue. Very simply put, we cannot police, prosecute, and imprison our way out of this. So again, treating gun violence as a public health crisis, and like any disease, finding a way to prevent and intervene on that type of disease, looking for opportunities through treatment and prevention and coordinated efforts. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read all of this. I think you all were able to receive the packet. But community-based public safety and intervention it holds a lot of different things inside of its framework. Specifically, a few items that I'll just point out. Engagement of community members, use of credible messengers, conflict mediation and resolution, support services, using data-driven approaches, focusing on high-risk individuals, and of course, as I mentioned before, this is a public health crisis, so using public health approaches to violence. And we do this with collaboration, sharing goals with other entities and community-based organizations that are looking at mitigating this issue, and of course, mutual support. Next slide, please. So our mission in the Office of Community Safety Initiatives is to improve the quality of life of all residents in the city of Birmingham. They're reimagining our public safety, and we're focusing on these three pillars as how we're going to do this through intervention, prevention with a public health approach to violence, holistic community engagement, communications and interagency collaboration, and finally, data collection, evaluation, accountability, and process improvement. And so utilizing this three-pillar method is how we're going to be approaching public safety from a community standpoint. Next slide. So gonna just highlight a lot of the things. Birmingham is actually moving in the right direction, but there's still work to do. And so some of the things that you have seen, that you all have collaborated with us and voted on and helped support is things like our Birmingham Reentry Alliance, the Public Safety Advisory Committee, the Violence Intervention Prevention Partners, which is our hospital-based violence intervention program, Common Ground, a restorative justice program held by municipal court inside of our Birmingham City Schools, Restore, our juvenile reentry program in partnership with the Jefferson County Family Resource Center, Family Court for the county. And then we have other partners, UAB and the work that they help do with our violence intervention program, Park and Rec for the Safe Haven program, and Jefferson County Department of Health. Just really good partnerships in the intervention and prevention space with the public health approach. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, there's going to be a lot of collaboration, work with our internal city departments that are already doing work, looking to convene a lot of spaces and opportunity for people to be able to have holistic conversations about the issues that we're dealing with, and also be able to provide actual solutions and allocation of resources and funding. A peace collective, which would help us mobilize a lot of our community-based organizations that are already on boots on the ground doing the work. A public safety collaborative, which is our public safety entities as well as our nonprofit and our corporate and business community. And the most important piece of community safety is the community. So gaining their input and allowing them to also play a major role in how they want public safety to look into their communities. Next slide, please. And on the data collection evaluation part, we, and you all know, have an agreement with the Aspen Institute Justice and Governance Partnership, and it's designed to help us improve our data sets and also improve our policy and being able to really structure our data and see exactly the people that we need to focus on and the places that we need to focus on. They actually found a local intermediary in PARCA, which is the Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama, that is holding a lot of this data so that we can continue to make data-informed decisions, manage our data, and also improve on current processes and also look at implementing new processes or new initiatives or new programs, whatever we need to do to fix these issues. Next slide. So quickly want to talk about money. So the National Institute of Criminal Justice Reform, also known as Nick Jr., not Nickelodeon, but Nick Jr., they actually estimated the cost of gun violence in both fatal and non-fatal shootings in Birmingham in 2023 at around $37 million. There's a breakdown, and this graphic is actually available online on Nick Jr.'s website. And I think it really just gives a good perspective of how much this is costing, the loss of life, and not only the loss of life, but also non-fatal shootings. So they assessed that every homicide, gun-related homicide in Birmingham costs $72,000, and every gun-related assault costs Birmingham $40,000. I think that's just good perspective to understand the type of investment that's going to be necessary in order to really create solutions to this problem. Next slide, please. More on money. So as it stands, and this is really beginning last year, with you all's investment and you all's partnership, this is just a breakdown of how we're currently investing into community-based public safety. And I really just want to thank you all as a city council for investing in this work in this past, I will say the previous year and then going into this year. So from the city budget, in total, we're investing about $1.7 million with Common Ground, with our juvenile reentry program, Credible Messenger, and the Aspen Institute, and as well as the partnership in us being able to partner with Jefferson County Family Resource Center to be granted $1.9 million from the DOJ for Community Violence Intervention Programs Initiative. And it is a 3-year grant, so we are looking to continue to look for grants and see how we can continue to fund a lot of their initiatives. And what that grant does specifically is it expanded the juvenile reentry program, which has been extremely successful, so we're very happy about that. And then as far as ARPA money, it's at $2 million for our VIP Squared and our Credible Messenger. Next slide. Just wanted to highlight, we're not doing this alone. We have some amazing partners, not just locally, because we have amazing partners that I mentioned locally, but we also have some amazing partnerships nationally. About 9 to 10 months ago, the Biden-Harris administration created the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And so we are a part of their national network, as well as 80 other cities in order, because they understand that this is an issue and it is a crisis. And so they have started to build their network so we can collaborate. We also work with the Health Alliance for Violence Intervention that helped us model our hospital violence-based intervention program. I mentioned Nick Jr. earlier, Advanced Peace and Center for American Progress, as well as Community-Based Public Safety Collective. And then, of course, just support from what we call our sister city now at this point, after a trip we took to Newark, the City of Newark OVP-TR. So just best practices, national collaborations, and technical support and technical assistance. Next slide, please. So after all that has been said, I do want to just review over what our goals are for this, for the next year. So as I mentioned before, we have existing programming and initiatives that you all have funded and supported. So my goal in this office with my team and of course with you all in partnership with the Mayor's Office and the City Council is that we want to make sure that we ensure accountability and effectiveness in new and existing programs. So the programming that we have and also programming that we may need to implement. We believe that it takes an ecosystem to mitigate these issues, and so we know that more things may need to come, and we're looking to make sure that we keep everybody accountable and that it's effective. In the same strand, manage implementation, resource allocation, and funding. As I said before, we got a $1.9 million DOJ grant. The people that granted it to us in the DOJ said it was because we had teeth in the game. They looked at our $1.7 million plus the money that we took for ARPA money and said, we know that Birmingham is serious and we can fund them this $2 million, which is a pretty large amount, to continue the work that they're doing. So we want to continue that strain. We want to show other grantors that we are serious about this and we're going to continue to work towards solutions. As I mentioned before, an ecosystem. So create an ecosystem for community violence intervention where you can see interagency, community-based organization, and interdepartmental collaboration foster solution-based approaches that prioritize community empowerment, equity, justice, and ultimately fostering a safer Birmingham for generations to come. Develop a comprehensive plan to address gun violence with the input and partnership of the on-the-ground community-based organizations, residents, and stakeholders to define what they want to see in this shared vision. There is no community safety without the community. And finally, create effective messaging with internal communications around violence from the administration to convey to the community. We know you all care, we know that the mayor cares, and we care, but we want to make sure that the community knows we care. And that is our focus, is to make sure that we are bringing awareness to this issue and empowering our community with that awareness and education. Next slide, please. That's it. All right, and of course, my information is here for those that are watching, and then of course, counselors, if you need to reach me or have any questions, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, one thing to just want to note in terms of the current investments, I would count the, what was it, $880-something thousand for Birmingham City Schools mental health program as something that we could leverage, you
Absolutely.
know, as an investment in community-based public safety. So just wanted to point that out. But I Also wanted to ask, you know, the thing that jumps out to me on this page is that philanthropy is not yet involved. And in the past, we've had a major philanthropic organization very involved in trying to address public safety. Can you account for why philanthropy isn't at the table currently?
I believe that that would be accounted for with us creating a real ecosystem. I don't think that, and this is just directly for community-based public safety, so they might have been looking at different ways to invest in public safety overall. But I think that creating this ecosystem will help direct the necessary resources and funding. One of the parts of the ecosystem was collaborating with all of the community-based organizations that are currently on the ground. And so when we have everybody at the table and we can say what types of services they're providing, whether it's victim services, mental health, to your point, whether it's completing victims' funding from the state, whatever services are being provided, we can just take a look and say, okay, this is what's necessary. This is going to help them continue the work. This is going to help SOARS provide them technical assistance. So my hope is that the philanthropy will not stay at zero, that directly focused on community-based public safety, that we can involve our philanthropic community that wants to get involved in this work.
Councilor Tate, you have any comments?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. What I will say is this. We have a real silo issue here, a real territorial issue. And, you know, gun violence is up all across America. And when you talk about CVI work, because I was having a conversation with one of our state representatives, and she was like, what is CVI? It's community violence intervention. It's going to take a lot of conversations to educate people where it really needs to transpire. I totally agree with you. When we look at the philanthropic world here, you got the Community Foundation, you got the Goodrich Foundation, you got the Alabama Power Foundation, you got regions where you have to go after these corporate dollars because you just don't extract money from grants. Everybody has to play their role in this. And I think a lot of conversation needs to transpire so people can really understand, you know, what it takes to reduce gun violence. We did not get in this overnight. We're not going to get out of this overnight. And so when you look at resources, an ecosystem consists of, you have mental health, you have people that can provide workforce development, all of these partners coming in. But the most important part is getting people to buy in. That's the most important part. You got to get the buy-in. Credible messengers are a different level of your violent interrupters. When you're trying to reduce violence in you know, these high-risk communities, it's going to take people that have credibility in these communities that can speak to those and spend time with those, because you are deploying individuals in these communities that, you know, when you look at the violent interruption piece, I'm just going to give you the OAA for an example. Deborah Daniels and her team had to leave Birmingham to go to Atlanta for them to believe in what they were doing. And it was they didn't have to convince the mayor over there, Afani Willis, the DA's office, to get them started. But then they had to come back to Birmingham and convince Birmingham that, you know, we are credible people that can do this work. And it's about building capacity, you know, in these organizations. But I just, you know, being in this Community Violence Leadership Academy has really given me a big perspective on what I knew, but what I know that needs to happen. I'm in a cohort with 31 people. I make 32 that's doing amazing work across the country. And so this isn't anything that we have to try to figure out. It is several models that are out here. When we went to Newark, they have an excellent model. It's about replicating it and making it, retrofitting it for Birmingham, but also, as you said, Mr. President, leaning in on philanthropical, corporate, because gun violence affects, not only does it affect community, it drives businesses down. You will not get people to bring their business into cities that are ridden with gun violence. It drives, the economics down. And, and I would highly, highly recommend to my colleagues to please send your staff or yourself, make yourself available to learn what is transpiring so you can get some clear understanding on how does this work, what makes it work. Because if you don't educate yourself on this, then you're going to always push back on something to say it's not working. And that's not true, because if you seeing gun violence being reduced in other places, and their population is way larger than Birmingham, we missing because we're not listening. And we're not educating ourselves to what really needs to transpire. Thank you, Mr. President.
I did have one question.
Yes, sir.
About, so you have a slide in here that shows the Public Safety Advisory Committee.
Yes,
Is that committee active?
yes, it is.
Okay,
It was relaunched in September of 2023.
okay.
Yes.
And they've been meeting?
Yes, they meet monthly. Yes, sir, in the Citizens Gallery on the second floor.
Okay, great, awesome. Any other questions?
And Mr. President, I would highly suggest, when, meeting with the Jefferson County delegate, getting them on board to really be champion gun violence on the state level, getting the next governor, the next leadership to really, to put that as a line item, because you're seeing governors across the country putting money into their general budget to fund gun violence throughout the state. So I would definitely recommend to this council and the administration to meet with our GA personnel and really look at some clear-cut ordinance or what people are doing around the country. And as you say, it has to come from multi-levels. The state has to be involved. The federal government is already involved. The city government is already involved. We need to get our Jefferson County partners more involved, philanthropy, corporate, because these streams of income has to come from everywhere. So gun violence should be at the top of everybody's mind, reducing violence, domestic violence, whatever type of violence. So you have your non-fatal shootings and you have your fatal shootings. And so when we're looking at building a vibrant city, everybody has to play their role in this. And what people have to understand is we're not trying to replace the police, but credible messengers and violent interrupters and CBOs complement the police department. Most police agencies are appreciating them. And so we got to build this trust and these relationships. And even, the leaders of these different departments, they have to play their role. PEP, Public Works, clean neighborhoods, lighting, effective lighting. We need to be hitting Alabama Power. You got power, we really got to do better than what we're doing.
Right, and I would dare say, I'm sure there's a lot of, Birmingham, the city of Birmingham gets a lot of attention, but gun violence is everywhere, and that's a point that I think is important to make with our state legislatures, because there, is a urban-rural divide in our legislature, and there's a lot more legislators that are elected from rural areas than there are from urbanized areas. But, it's, I think it's safe to assume that there are a great number of homicides, a great number of gun violence victims in rural areas, the same as urbanized areas. So something important to remember. Yeah. Council Clark.
So I just wanted to make a couple of comments and thank Uche for coming forward to brief us. This is so important. And I feel like, having a group in the administration that's kind of focused on this sort of work is important, beyond law enforcement, sort of the intervention and prevention types of things. And as we pass all these, like we fund all this disconnected stuff, I think, as like Councilor Quinn was saying, tying that in, like the mental health investments, also the financial literacy,
That's right.
any kind of youth, things we're doing to engage our youth, the reading program that had such impact
Page Pals.
on the Page Pals. And I'm thinking about really small investments comparatively that District 8 made, like we've teamed with the administration to fund Brother Let's Talk to make free counseling services available. And then I invested in some cultural arts programming for the youth detention facility. But to my knowledge, like we sponsor that stuff, but I'm not checking to see what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? We wrote the check, but so somebody on that side kind of needs to own, making sure people are doing what we asked them to do in the contract or what we sponsored. So I hope you'll leverage those things. And, I often think about how, when I was here just 25 years ago, all the investments that were going into our youth, like with Camp Birmingham, with our DYS used to have lock-ins. We had the police athletic teams. The city funded a contract for Partners in Neighborhood Growth, the athletic programs and public housing. But when these people who ran, it's like the programs just didn't continue. And I guess when Frank Horn, for instance, retired, we were like, oh, that's $4 million we could put back in the city budget. But nobody really thought about, well, are we going to keep investing in these kids in public housing? So I just think a lot of things got dropped that used to happen to invest in our youth. And maybe there's other things that have come to replace it. But I don't know. I can't really point to the things that have come to replace it. I can just point to the things that used to be that are no longer. So I just, sometimes I wonder if that's part of what happened, because we just, stopped investing programmatically. But anyway, thank you. You had a heavy lift and, just, the other thing is opioid settlement money. I know we're going to be getting a lot of it, and I feel like the opioid deaths is something we're not really looking at. And if we could just look at that toll and be reminded of the impact of opioid deaths, and then how are we going to spend that money? How are we going to invest it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing I got to say, in the context of this conversation is that, we are allocating a significant amount of money every year in the budget to public safety, specifically with respect to our police department that is not being expended for public safety. So, to me, that's almost like a breach of contract with the community that, we said in the budget that we were going to spend X amount of dollars on public safety and that service wasn't delivered. So I would encourage, the administration and police department to think creatively about, how to use that funding and direct it towards public safety initiatives. And I think, these types of community-based violence intervention, to me, that's public safety. I'm not advocating for any type of decrease in our commitment to public safety in terms of financial resources. What I'm advocating for is that we actually use what we're saying we're going to use towards public safety for public safety. So just got to interject that. Councilor Tate, you want to wrap us
Yeah,
up?
and I just want to kind of piggyback off what Councilor Clark said. You know, when you talked about 20 years ago, the investment that was made in youth, but where we are today is we seeing, you know, mental illness at its highest. And so generational issues, and if we keep clipping branches off and not getting to the root, the problem will still be there. And so when you look at this from a holistic approach, it's about the whole family unit. You got to go after everybody. Because if you have a child in a household who is displaying, you know, some behaviors, that spins on, you know, the other kids. And so, as you said, we made some significant investments. I did, you know, with Dr. Nadia Richardson and the Black Women's Mental Health Institute, offering free counseling in District 9. I know Councilor Smitherman did. But it's going to take, you know, the root, get into the root. So when we talking about asking people that's in survival mode, so it's like, hey, you need to do something different. What are we going to replace that with? We got to think about, you got to have this whole ecosystem running, saying if you got a case managed, a credible messenger that has a case managed, cases that they have. They may have 5 or 6 people that they walking with, but they not just walking with these people one day. This stuff is, they walking with these people years to make sure that they are trending in the right places. But we got to be able to, because what people don't realize, these are 1%ers. These are people it's a few clustered of people that's causing all this chaotic behavior, you know, in community. And so when you asking people to, hey, I need you to straighten your life up. What are we giving? We're not going to give you anything, but what do we replace? But I believe in accountability now. Don't get me wrong. But people deserve an opportunity to change their life. But if we don't have any systems or any holistic ecosystem running, and I'm with you, Councilor Clark, passing out checks and no accountability, no measured outcome. You just got a big check. We don't know if you out here riding on 24s. We don't know that. Because you ain't came back and reported out. I want to see what you're doing with the money that you get. Whose life are you impacting? That's the spirit that this city council needs to be operating in. It needs to be at the forefront of everybody's mind. And I pray and I hope that it becomes a top priority for all of us. If you can't come to a meeting, send your staff. Because it is no way that you can be down for what's going on and you don't even know what CVI means. You got to educate yourself. You got to know what a credible messenger is. You got to know what a violent interrupter is. You got to know what an office of violence prevention is. You got to know what it takes to run a holistic ecosystem. We got to know what the World Health Order says about gun violence. Because we saying that gun violence is a public health crisis. So that means that we quarantining. What does the World Health Order say about gun violence? It affects a whole community and people in the community. So I'm going to leave y'all with that, leave y'all something to think about, and I'm going to leave it on this city council to do what's right.
Well, again, thank you all, and thank you, Councilor Tate. Thank you all. Councilor Tate has been a great partner in this as the Chair of Public Safety, so I sincerely appreciate you all's vote of confidence in this work, and we can all do this together. So thank you.
Thank you for the report. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
All right.
All right. I am going to call it quits. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Being adjourned. Thank you.